Hello, everyone, and welcome to my review of a couple of different films from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. This is gonna be a long one. This review will cover the original film from 1974, the 2003 remake, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D from 2013, and Leatherface from 2017, the prequel to the original. I know this is less than half the films in the franchise, and I don't plan to cover it anymore, as I'm just not all that interested given the quality of what I've seen and what I've heard in regards to the other films. Starting with the original 1974 film, this was actually a very incredible movie. I went in not expecting much, and I was blown away. So many things about this film really stuck out to me, and I couldn't imagine what it must have been like back in the day. The cinematography of this film was just magical. There's a variety of incredible shots, angles, and cuts. The scene setting was also just perfect. Everything feels so calm, yet with a sense of unease. My favorite example of this has to be the introduction of Leatherface himself. The house looks so average, not a shred of suspicion. Even the inside isn't all that eerie except for the red wall. There's no massive build up to Leatherface. He just steps out from the doorway, kills Kirk, then slams the rolling door shut. It's all over so fast, and I love it. It's almost more terrifying without the build up, to be fully honest. His reveal walks this line between being a big scene and being a jump scare. It's very unique in that way, and I love that. It's left a very memorable introduction for Leatherface. Now, covering more of the actual film, the introduction of the film sets up the movie so brilliantly. The title crawl gave us a taste of what's to come. The flashbulb pictures with the ringing sound effect was eerie, all followed by a shot of a beautiful sun blanketing the sky behind decaying corpses. It was at this point I knew I was in for something wild. Except the film becomes painstakingly slow for the first half. However, the slow nature of this first half is not bad, quite the opposite. I wish more films nowadays had such immense build up like this. The van scene featured such a stunning and memorable performance from the hitchhiker, who I actually later found out is named Nubbins. The unease created with every passing second he was in the van was palpable. He gave off a sense of sheer unpredictability. I did previously discuss the introduction of Leatherface, but shortly after this scene, we get the scene with Pam, primarily focusing on the room with the bones. And this is terrifying, but also incredibly creative. It's packed with so much detail, but framed in a large variety of focus shots that I feel like it's not too overwhelming. After Jerry is killed, Leatherface has this pseudo mental freakout in which he doesn't feel like a slasher. He had three people come into his house, and after he killed them, he seems to maybe even feel regret as he sits by the window alone. This has to be the second most surprising scene in the film for me. It added layers or depth to a character I had previously thought was a one note killer, and I applaud the film for this. I wouldn't say the scene makes him sympathetic, but it certainly doesn't portray him as heartless. From this point on, the film really ramped up for me. We finally get a chainsaw kill, which is followed by a very realistic chase scene. And personally, I think that this detail adds a nice sense of realism to the film. And that is, of course, Leatherface actually running, as opposed to where Michael and Jason would just kind of walk or speed walk. The chase scene ends with an excellent plot twist. Leatherface stops chasing her, and we get the reveal that the gas station attendant, who I also later found out is named Drayton Sawyer, is evil. It was an incredibly well executed twist. I didn't see this coming, and I was blown away by it. Then, as he drives to Sally's house, we meet the hitchhiker again, learning that Nubbins is the brother of Drayton and Leatherface, completing this trio of siblings. And as I watched this scene play out, I just sat there, blown away. I couldn't mentally understand or expect what could happen next, because I had no idea that this franchise was focused on the Sawyer family until viewing the first film. So, seeing these three characters come together for the climax was incredibly intriguing, and it held my complete interest in the events to come with the film's third act, the dinner scene. And this starts with Leatherface and Nubbins bringing down their grandfather, who I'd previously thought was dead due to his previous appearance in the chase scene. However, he's alive, and he drinks Sally's blood, and it's at this point this film really just ascends for me to something I've never seen before. This film was no longer by the numbers. It had me on the edge of my seat due to the fact that I was so unsure of what would happen next. The next few scenes felt like they lasted so much longer than they did. The camera angles, cuts, screams, mocking, pleading, scene setting, and explanation of dynamics, it was all just horrifying. I could really empathize with the horror Sally was feeling here, and I think that that's an incredible testament to how well this scene was filmed. And it was at this point in the movie that I did genuinely think that Sally was going to die. Following this, they try to have their grandpa kill Sally, but this takes an almost comedic turn with him not even being able to swing the hammer, and he just keeps dropping it. This scene is so chaotic, and I love it. I've never experienced a scene in cinema quite like the dinner scene. As another chase scene occurs, we see Nubbins actually die from being run over by a truck. I didn't see that coming. Then, the final few minutes of this film are just wild. That's the best way I can describe it, is it's just wild. Like I said previously, I had no idea what could possibly occur next. And so, as Sally runs, the truck driver throws a wrench at Leatherface, and then he runs away, disappearing off screen, never to be seen again. Another car just randomly rolls around, does a U turn, picks up Sally, and then they just drive away as Sally is laughing hysterically while Leatherface swings his chainsaw in an almost dance of frustration in the light of the sunrise. And then that's it. That's it. The film just ends. And I sat there questioning just what in the world had I watched. I have never seen a film quite like this. And this film is so weird. And I do genuinely mean that in the best way possible. And I would actually like to argue that this film, being 50 years old, feels like it has more soul than most all films in recent years. And this actually extends to its sequels, or at least the ones I've seen. I find that all subsequent films fail to capture what made this one such a masterpiece. The original film is just fantastic. I truly think that this is a top tier movie, and it's one of the best film experiences I've had in a while. Now, the same really cannot be said for the rest of the films I'm covering here. Getting into the 2003 reboot, this film honestly isn't too bad. I think it suffers for being bland, especially in comparison to the original. The framing and cinematography of this film were quite well done, however, in a different aspect as opposed to the original. I especially like a lot of the wider shots present in this film, and the actual sets were creepy and spooky. However, personally, I think that this does not work. See, the key to the scary nature in the original is its subtlety. The Sawyer house, the gas station, both are unsuspecting. The Sawyer house peaceful, even. That was the true horror. It had an air of calmness to it, with only hints of suspicion or creepiness, such as with the random assortment of cars by the generator, or the art dangling from the tree. The same logic applies to Leatherface. He is scary in this film. He has a scary mask, he is highly aggressive, and he seeks killing. Whereas the original Leatherface has a very strewn together mask, revealing bits of his face. On top of that, in the original, Leatherface primarily kills people in his home in an almost defensive manner, and then he almost contemplates it. He's a mentally weak individual who's even bullied by his brother. For a remake, they absolutely fail at capturing the mental aspect and the almost childlike essence of Leatherface. I'm not so much a fan of Sawyer's, or I believe it's the Hewitts in this film. The sheriff was done exceptionally well. I don't know the name of the actor, but that was a fantastic job he did here. However, the rest of the family lacked much personality or standout qualities. On top of this, the reveal that everyone knows each other just felt so much more obvious in this film. On that note, for a remake, I am quite surprised that there is no dinner scene present in this film, when that was such a captivating part of the original and absolutely my favorite aspect and scene of the original. As for the climax, I didn't much care for it. Leatherface getting his entire arm cut off was just silly. Honestly, and the chase scene didn't impress me either. Overall, it's not too bad of a film. I just feel that when compared to the original, it cannot hold a candle to what the 74 film was. And in that respect, it absolutely fails. Texas Chainsaw 3D from 2013 is a hot mess of a film. However, I must admit, subjectively, I did kind of like it, and I actually had some fun with this film. The opening to this film, in concept, was interesting. Returning to the original film had a lot of potential, but I feel like they dropped the ball. My biggest question in this opening part of this film is, who the heck are these other Sawyers? Where do they come from? Are they cannibals as well? Why does Bert Hartman hate the Sawyers? Why doesn't the sheriff arrest literally anyone there? Why does the police allow stuff like tampering with evidence, arson, and murder? This opening scene does not do a good job at introducing this film. Not that the film gets much better afterwards. I'll discuss this more in a minute, but I actually like the family dynamic of Heather being a Sawyer, and I'd like to discuss how I think this film could have played better with this dynamic. Here, I honestly don't have much to say about the first half of this film. Uh, Honestly, I don't really have much to say until we approach the climax. The scene of Heather in the cellar with, I believe it's Kenny, getting killed, that was scary. That was interesting. The scene with the police officer in the cellar was eerie, horrifying, and probably the best scene in this film for me. The concept of the town hunting down Heather was actually a nice inverse of the first film, with Sally having no one trustworthy to turn to. And the same applies here for Heather. I don't think it's done tremendously well, especially not the twist, being that Bert and Carl do share a conversation earlier in the film, and it's clear that they know each other. Heather killing Ollie feels justifiable in this movie with everything that's happened to her I only wish that she killed Carl too. Now, there is one line in this film. It's possibly the single worst line in the four films that I watched. Heather throws Leatherface his chainsaw, and she says, "Do your thing, cuz." I was genuinely laughing at this. Not more than 3 or 4 hours earlier, he was trying to kill her. He's the reason behind all of her friends' death, and she just says it so casually. It's just goofy. The climax was alright. I like seeing Bert die, but I really don't like the ending with Heather staying at the Sawyer family home. However, the final scene of Leatherface closing the door was a nice callback to the original, and the post credits scene of the film was funny enough. Now, you may ask, when I brought up, how can this film be fixed? Well, it kind of can't, but I do have some ideas for plot changes that could benefit this film and make it more justifiable as to why Heather would stay with Leatherface at the end of the movie. However, I will admit, they're not great. They don't really fix the film all that much. This is more just fun fluff for me. Conceptually, I like the idea of a long lost Sawyer family member, so I would definitely keep that. When it comes to Heather's adopted parents, I would have included a flashback of one or both of them being abusive towards her. More than likely her adopted father, and this would disconnect her from a family unit. With her friends, I would have Kenny, Nikki's very recent boyfriend, be recent to the point where Heather doesn't even know him and has never met him before. That would kind of make it so when he dies, she doesn't have any attachment to him. With Nikki and Ryan, I would have a scene of Heather finding them sleeping together, destroying her world, as Ryan was all she had since she didn't have a cohesive or connected family unit. Then we see her look at the photos, and then this leads to the chase scene. When it comes to the death of Ryan and Nikki, have the car crash be from Ryan's drunk driving, getting himself killed. And on the police intercom, you could have Carl hear that an officer killed Nikki, and Heather can overhear this from the back of the police car. I also wouldn't have Heather write murderers on the photo. In her moment of isolation and desperation, Leatherface saving her could be the turning point in which she helps him and realizes she is all he has. Whereas I feel like this moment of transition comes a little bit earlier in the film with her writing murderers on the photo. From this, get rid of the line, "Do your thing, cuz." And it's just terrible. And to top this off, let's just say Carl unconsensually touches her and Leatherface attacks Carl, and then Heather gets to kill him in the end. Like I said, still not great, but it's an improvement. It at least I think these changes would make it a little more justifiable as to why Heather would stay with Leatherface at the end of the film. As for Leatherface, the 2017 film, this is genuinely an awful film. As an origin for Leatherface, it's horrible. As a horror movie, it's pretty bad. I'm not even really sure where to start. This film is just boring and stupid. I'll add some points at the end I think could help it, just like I did with the 2013 film. Now, this film does answer some questions from the 2013 film, namely who the Carsons are, why the Hartmans hate the Sawyers, and the opening two scenes of this film weren't terrible, and we actually were off to a decent start here. The birthday was a neat concept, and seeing Grandpa Sawyer actually kill someone with a hammer was great to see. I liked that a lot. And the kill in the beginning with the police chief's daughter was graphic, and it got me genuinely excited for what this film had in store. However, outside of the opening few minutes, I absolutely hated this film. Like the 2013 one, I really don't have much to say on the first half. Jumping to the trailer house in the forest, we have a scene that made me stop this movie and turn off my computer. That is, of course, the psycho kids sleeping with the dead body. This scene is completely unnecessary to the film. It's disgusting and a complete waste of time, and I really don't see the point in including this scene except for shock value. The whole main character switch in this film is also rather pointless to me. I did not like Jerry, and seeing his descent did not sell me on the character whatsoever. His entire character runs in contrast to both Leatherface from the original and Leatherface from the 2013 film. As I believe in the 2013 film, the lawyer mentions that Leatherface has the mental capacity of an 8-year-old. Well, that's clearly not evident here with Jerry, and I'm like 95% sure that the 2017 film is supposed to be in continuity with the 2013 film, and the original, of course. The rest of the cast is just not very interesting or engaging, especially the other kids. And by far my biggest issue comes from the death of the nurse. This girl is so kind to Jerry throughout this film. Jerry does so much to protect her, and she goes through so much with him. And then to see him just kill her in the final moment between them feels very dissatisfying. I do think that it ruins what was left of the terrible version of this character. What are some small changes I'd make to try to improve this film? Well, for starters, I would change up the opening scenes. I would actually have Nubbins kill the police chief's daughter, as Drayton doing it goes against the established character of Drayton from the original when he says he can't bring himself to kill someone. That, again, this film is supposed to be in line with the continuity of the original, but it's not. Like, there's clearly things that do not align. In the beginning, I do think we should have more scenes of Verna and Jedediah together, which would build up their bond or show Jedediah being more attached to his mother. And this would tie in to Jedediah being more willing to kill Lizzie. And then, even to add to this, we could have extra scenes of Lizzie maybe double crossing Jerry earlier in the film, or even being mean to him with how fed up she is, which would lower or even kill his attachment to her. Quite honestly, I feel like this film would have just worked if it was created in a brand new continuity, or even if it just divorced itself from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Change a few things here and there, change a couple names, and you have a half decent origin story to a slasher on your hands. When discussing these films together, this franchise honestly left me less than impressed. It remained, well, the original remains an incredible piece of media, regardless of its age and the films to follow it. Nothing's going to be able to take that away, and nothing will ever take away my enjoyment I have of the 1974 film. I still had some fun with this franchise overall. It certainly has left a small impression on me. I'm curious as to anyone who's made it this far, what are your thoughts on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise? Do you agree with my praise of the original? And that's going to be all from me today. Bye, guys.